Hey guys, and welcome back to the Spruce and Linen channel. This is part 2 of our 3-part mini woven wall hanging series. We're gonna jump right in and start weaving. All right, so hopefully you've watched part 1 and you have your warp and your fringe finished. And now we're going to start weaving. So you can feel free to use the same colors as me, the same pattern, or you can mix it up and do your own thing. So I'm gonna start with, let's say, we're gonna start with 8 rows of plain weaving. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now this is gonna be a really simple pattern for you to try on your probably very first mini woven wall hanging. I'm gonna keep it simple, but you're gonna learn a couple of different stitches. All right. So like before, plain weave is just over 1, under 1, and you just repeat that all the way across. Okay, so different from when we did the plain weaving underneath the fringe, we're gonna let this tail hang out to the side because we're gonna tuck that in back into the back later. Just make sure you leave, 3 to 4 inches there for yourself for later. All right, so we're just gonna continue doing that. So hopefully I mentioned this before, but if I didn't, each row of plain weaving is opposite from the one before it. So here you can see that this string is over this one. So now I'm going to go under that one. So we're always working the opposite of the one previous. All right, so now we've finished our 8 rows of plain weaving. You're once again just gonna leave yourself a little bit of a tail and just snip that off. So now we're gonna start working with some of our roving. So I'm going to choose this gray and we're gonna be just doing 1 row through here. So I'm gonna leave myself a little bit of tail here, a little bit of a tail here. Now a trick with roving, specifically with merino roving, if this is acrylic roving that you're using, you're going to need to actually use scissors to cut it because it doesn't behave the same way as real wool. But if you're using merino, just give yourself again a few inches on each side. So I want to break it here. You'll notice that I can pull super hard and it's not coming apart. The trick is to spread your hands apart a little bit more and just pull gently. And you'll see it starts to come apart. So now we have that. Now I'm going to split this in 2. So if you look here, you'll see that there's quite a nice crease just in here. So that's where I'm gonna start splitting the wool. And you wanna just do it really gently so that it splits nice and evenly. All right, so we're gonna save that for later on in the weaving. With this strand, we are going to do plain weave again, but we are going to go over 2 and under 2, all the way across. Usually when I'm weaving roving like this, I do just use my fingers versus the tapestry needle, but you can use the tapestry needle as well. Okay, so this is something I want to talk about here. You want to have, for stitches like this, so hopefully you know kind of what you're doing, and you can see I made this longer than I needed to. You want to have somewhat of a plan of what you're doing with your weaving before, but a good rule of thumb is to have an odd group of 2s, so that, see how over here I'm over on this end and I'm also over on this one. If this was under, you can see how we'd kind of miss this when we go to tuck it around later. So we're just gonna stick that in there, beat it down just a little bit, and we're gonna leave those tails long. Again, you probably only needed about that much. I just made this a little bit longer. So now we're gonna get another piece of our yarn. And again, you can switch up the colors, like have fun with this. You don't have to do exactly what I'm doing, but feel free to do so. So this time I'm gonna do just 6 rows of plain weave. So And we're back to going over one and under one. I feel like I maybe screwed up. No. Okay, so remember, when you're coming back around, you want to do the opposite of this one. So this, I'm going to go over this string and under this one, all the way across. Okay, so here's something I want to show you. So we're getting a little loose on this side. I am trying to prevent this from going in, but I also don't want these big like loops on the side. So all I'm doing is I'm going to pull that tight against that string. I'm going to pinch it, create my hill, spread it out a little more, and beat it down. And see, now you can see that's pretty nice on that side. Generally speaking, one side is always going to look nicer than the other, and that's totally normal. And that has to do with the twist of the yarn and just the way that it lays on one side versus the other. But again, totally normal. It's all good. And then here, try not to let this go down here. Just keep it up here. This will all be solved later when we tuck in the ends. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 more rows. All right, so now we're at the end of this row. Again, leaving yourself a tail, cut that off. And now is the exciting part. We're gonna do a sumac stitch right here. So on a mini woven wall hanging, what I have found to work best is to make this piece a little bit more than 2.5 times the width of this, because we're going to be looping it around. So you want to make sure you have enough. So we're going to go 1, 2, we're going to go a half, so about there. Again, spread your hands apart and pull. And once again, we're going to split the wool in half. So I'm looking for that kind of natural spot where it wants to split, as you can see. And we're just going to start pulling that. Again, be very gentle. You don't want to go reaming through this because it might not pull out evenly. All right, so we're going to set this aside because we're going to use that for the other side. Now, there's lots of different ways to do everything that I'm doing here. I'll just say that tapestry is so diverse. You can do everything a lot of different ways. I'm showing you the way that I use and I love. So for sumac, we actually are going to wrap it the opposite direction that we're going in, if that makes sense. So I'm going to show you. You're going to want to leave yourself a little tail to tuck around later. You're going to take 2 strings and you're going to go around and back. So I'm just going to pull this a little bit tighter. That's about all we need on the end there. And you're also going to just kind of let it twist a little bit. We're going to skip these 2 strings and we're going to go to the next 2. We're going to keep doing that. So skip 2 and grab the next 2. Don't worry about that. That'll come off. Skip 2 and grab the next 2. Remember, we're going to wrap it in the reverse order that we're weaving in. So we're weaving in this way, so we're wrapping that way. And as I'm going across, I'm just trying to make sure that each of these are like nice and even, like one isn't bunched out way more than the other. Skip 2, grab 2. Skip 2. And again, just kind of letting that twist a little bit. Skip 2. See, and you can see once again why having an odd group of 2 makes all the difference. So we're going to skip 2, and the last 2 will be able to wrap around again. Now, as you can see, once again, I have a little bit too much, but I always say I'd rather have too much than not enough, because that makes tucking in the ends later really difficult. All right, so now we're going to do the same thing going in the opposite direction. So if we just did this stitch again, these are going to lay this direction. What we want to create that braid look is to have these little loops going this way. So we're going to start from the right side and we're going to move left. All right, so once again, oh, stuff like this bothers me, so I'm just going to pull that out. Got another color stuck in here. Okay, so remember, loop the opposite way that you're weaving in. So we're going to loop around this way, leaving ourselves a tail, and we're kind of twisting this direction. Skip 2, grab 2, and see we're skipping the same as we did in the previous row so that these rows line up. And you can start to see that we're getting that braid effect that is so beautiful with the sumac stitch. Skip 2. Oh, and you can see here, if you can see this, the wool is a little bit wonky there. Actually, that's just a loose piece, so I'm just going to pull that out. All right, so now we have this beautiful braid in the middle of our weaving. And what we're going to do now is we're going to do all of this in reverse going up. So we have this nice, simple stripe weaving. So once again, hopefully I can one of these times get my amount of yarn right. So we're going to do 6 rows of plain weave. So again, I always, when I start my row, I want to go over first, because then that means this little piece of yarn is going to wrap right around there when we go tuck it in. So I'm going to start with over. Remember to leave yourself a tail. And don't beat too hard down on that sumac stitch, because that's going to make it want to all bunch up together. So again, opposite. All right, so now we're ready to go back to our roving row here. And you know, when you're beating, you can see I'm a little bit crooked here. This one is a little bit higher, so I'm just gonna beat down that side a little bit more. That's looking pretty good. And I'm gonna take this other half of the roving that we split earlier, and I'm gonna weave that in over 2, under 2. All right, now that that's in there, we're going to repeat this row. So that's 8 rows of plain weave. All right, so since this ended up on an under, I'm just going to loop that back around that way. Now, you can stop here. You can have this as the top of your weaving, but I am going to put kind of a half sumac stitch in. Some people like to use what's called a hem stitch. I'm just going to do a half sumac just to make this top just a little bit prettier. So you're going to take another piece of yarn, or you could have, I should have added it to what I calculated here, but I didn't do that. So I'm going to take a piece of yarn that's about 3 widths, and maybe a little more just to make sure. And we're gonna do what we did with this, but just half of it. So I'm gonna start here, and we're not gonna skip any strings, we're gonna go on all of them. So I'm just gonna loop that here and just go across on every string. I'm gonna make this one quite tight, just so it's kind of like a nice little finishing. All right, guys, that's the end of the weaving portion. All right, guys, so we're all done the weaving portion of this mini woven wall hanging, so part 3 will be all the finishing. If you like this video, please hit that like button, subscribe, and click the bell to get notifications when I post new videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. All right, guys, so hopefully you've watched part... Hey guys, and welcome back to the Spruce and Linen.